Hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another Wizard101 video. I'm your host of Frenzy Gamer, and today I'd like to welcome you guys to yet another Rant Tavern, the video series where I just talk about various Wizard101 topics. And in today's topic, I want to touch up on Karamelle and my thoughts on the world overall, since I did it twice. The first time being a walkthrough series that I did on both YouTube and Twitch. I'll be uploading the VODs from Twitch to YouTube and also be doing some stream highlights later on. But my second time, I essentially took it more on the gameplay's perspective, no dialogue, just full-on combat, and decided to formulate a little bit more on an opinion on what I think on the world overall. And pretty much, without giving too much spoilers, is I think that it was a really good world. The writing definitely carried the world overall. Aesthetically, there are some pretty reused features, not just from the world itself, but also from other worlds that we've been through before. And finally, being that the combat was very interesting. I found it very easy in a way, but also pretty fun, and makes me a little bit hopeful for the future of the next worlds in this current arc, because the AI essentially has improved quite well. They're helping each other a little bit better now. I also had a moment specifically where I got stun chained. That was fun. And they also have been using more spells like Juju. They've been using Pigsy when they really need to use Pigsy. They've also been using other spells like Impede. I actually got impeded once, and that was really insane. But overall, I have to say that it's a good world. And I know a lot of people have been pretty mixed on the world overall, considering that it has been a couple of years. But to that, I will have to say to you guys that you have to keep in mind that during those couple of years, a lot of things have changed. There has been new implementations during those years, like the Catacombs, which also was technically a little bit story-based. There's also been PvP changes that also affected PvE. The spell audit was a really big one, and there's just so many things that were being done over those years that it kind of makes sense that most of their focus wasn't necessarily on the new world, but more in terms of the PvP perspective, since PvP definitely is going to be a big thing that needs to be changed. It's been neglected for so many years, and finally our voices are going to be heard in the PvP community. So again, you have to keep that in mind. I understand that not everyone does PvP, but you also have to keep it in mind that they want to make sure that everyone is happy to an extent. And the fact that we've been neglected for so long in terms of the PvP community, I am actually really glad that changes are being made. Now, whether if I'm a fan or not of these changes is going to be probably in future installments of Rant Tavern, but essentially I'm glad that there's at least change going on, and I'm also glad that our voices are being heard. And hopefully, you know, people can come a little bit more to a conclusion that, hey, overall it's not that bad. Because I personally feel like people have been finding reasons to hate the world when they didn't really have a reason to begin with. But that's enough about, you know, the non-spoiler parts of the game in terms of the world. Let's actually talk a little bit more on the spoilers. So this is the point where I recommend you guys to just click off the video and come back later when you finish Karamelle. So in terms of the story, it's mainly about learning of the Cabal. You're suspecting that Von Trapp, who's the musicologist, is technically a traitor and is part of the Cabal. It turns out that it was true, and he takes you eventually to the Cabal headquarters. You get to meet the Old One, which is actually referenced a lot in Pirate 101 in terms of the puppet shows, but wasn't necessarily referenced in the story, at least not to my knowledge. But you get to finally meet who this man is. He's apparently the head of the Cabal, and he gets sucked away by a portal. And the Cabalists are there, who you actually do fight, these including Judge Veg, Copycat, and the Quake Charmer. You get to see that they blame you for taking the Old One, and essentially the whole story is about trying to figure out as to who's creating these holes, not just because you wanted to, you know, prove yourself, but you also want to make sure that nothing really awful is going on in Karamelle overall, since you later find out about how it's also a little bit of a story being during the progressive era where journalists are trying to expose the truths of the meat industry. And this is fairly similar to that, except in a candy world, with Nana being the leader, who isn't necessarily a person, she's an idea. And what you're trying to do at that point was not only trying to uncover the truth about the black holes, but you're also trying to make sure that you stop the Happiness Initiative. And for those who probably didn't pay too much attention to the story, the Happiness Initiative was essentially mass producing products at the risk of probably affecting not only your citizens, but also affecting this whole spiral itself, because it's not necessarily the best sanitary plan, and it's not safe. So it's essentially mass producing all this stuff and set them all over the spiral to bring happiness. And you can already see where this is going. Not the best of ideas, because not only are you overworking everyone, and it's kind of also technically a little bit of a dictatorship, but it also was not safe for anyone in their little city of Karamelle. And it was really interesting. One of my least favorite parts of it for sure was the photomancy part, because I just found it annoying, but everything else is just fine. And in terms of like the combat, I found it to be very interesting, like I said before, how it's improved AI, and it gives me some hopes for the future. And essentially my most favorite fight for sure in terms of Karamelle, in terms of the Caballists, I think one of my favorite fights has to be Copycat, because it works pretty similar to Fellspawn, but with a twist being that the last minion is the person who supports you. So I found that a little interesting. Judge Veg was probably one of my least favorites, because I didn't really know how to beat it, and I had to have help for it. But essentially it's like you turn to a polymorph, but I didn't really know as to how to get away from it or how to change back. Maybe there was a way that I didn't know. If there is, let me know, because I might want to consider soloing it next time. But there is that. And in terms of just my favorite fights overall, it definitely has to deal with the one in Gobblestone, and there's also the final fight. So they work very similar in a way. The one in Gobblestone essentially is an endurance fight where you go against some oogie boogie like enemies that look like trash mobs, and essentially the idea is being able to kill most of them but not all of them, because if you kill one of them, the boss decides to use a non-resistible damage sheep that does 25% of your health. So the goal is to defeat them as fast as you can, but also try not to go too fast to the point where you kill all of them, because if you kill all of them right at once, you die. So in terms of my strategy, what I did for death is I use empowerment so I can keep consistently getting pips, and I use drains not only for myself being able to regain the health that I lose, but also because it was easy to kill most of them but not all of them, since there were some mobs that resisted to my school pretty well, making it a little bit easier to do. And that pretty much worked really well for me. I think that's very easy for death. Obviously other schools will struggle, but essentially the idea is you know, for me, I kill 3 of them of the 4. I get taken like 75% of damage, and then he resummons more minions. I then use a drain again to regain most, if not all, my health, and he does the same cheat, but this time it's for the last one being 25% damage, and I finally then kill the last one. So again, easy dub for me. Now in the final fight, is when you get to realize who was the cause of making those black holes, and it turns out that it's your evil self. So it kind of puts the clues around to where you kind of think about, oh, this is probably what the nothing is. The nothing is your evil self. He's the one causing these black holes, and essentially with black holes there's really like nothing inside. So, you know, it all seems to kind of add up together, but there's also a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end as well to keep you excited for the next upcoming world. But in terms of the combat at that area, it works very similarly to the Gobblestone boss, but the difference is that you're going against your evil self, and your evil self is the one who creates the cheats. And the cheats for the evil self essentially deals with giving you cards that are undiscardable, and you either have the choice of going very quickly so you don't have to get clogged up with spells that you can't use because it'll be against you rather than for you, or now and then you can probably try to remove, you know, those cards that aren't as usable so that you could possibly get more cards that are a little bit more in your favor. And it's a little bit of an endurance match, just like the last one, except you also have to go very fast. That way you don't get to the point where your deck is clogged and either you'll take even longer to finish it, or you just probably won't be able to finish it at all. Again, I was able to solo this on my Death Wizard as well. It was a pretty decent solo. It was really fun. I liked the mechanic for sure because it was different. But at the same time, I feel like for some other schools, maybe you want to have at least one extra person in there. That way you guys are able to kill the boss easier. But the idea is to kill the minions first and then finally the boss. There's 3 sets of minions. You have the elementals, and then afterwards when they die you have the spirits, and once they die you go against Balance and Shadow, and that finally completes the whole cheat from the main boss, and you get to finally kill the main boss and get quite a bit of loot. What I did figure out is that you do pretty much get every single item that you can get from Karamelle through crafting through that last boss, and you can also get a spell through that last boss. Through my experience, I've been able to get a spell each time I beat the boss, but in terms of the quantity, I've only been able to manage to get 1 per fight. And there has been word by the devs that you can actually get possibly 35, but we're going to assume that it's pretty rare to get to 35. However, essentially, in terms of how they changed a little bit of the questing stuff, is they decide to make rewards not only just be experience, but also the chance for you to get some spellaments along the way. So in the main storyline, you get at least 1 spellament per quest, and in terms of the side quests, you tend to get certain spellaments as well. And more than likely, we're assuming that it's going to be based on your school. So if you're playing on the Death Wizard, if you do the side quest, more than likely you're going to be getting the Snack Attack spellament. And it's really cool because it encourages players to not only do the storyline for the spellaments, but they also encourage you to do the side quests, not only to get more of the experience for the new world, but also to be rewarded for doing the experience. And I hope that this is going to be a common thing that happens in future installments of the 4th arc, but also I hope that this also comes in the 1st arc and then 4th, because that will definitely allow players to not only be rewarded for doing side quests, but also they get some sort of benefit by doing the main storyline by getting spellaments. Maybe you can have it like in Wizard City, you get like lightning bats and thunder snakes, etc, etc. Again, it will be really cool overall if that system that they did in Karamelle is also implemented through, you know, other arcs like the 1st arc. So again, lots of really interesting things for sure on this world, and it gives me a lot of hope because not only did the story carry the world overall, and I'm not surprised because it's made by the Pyro 101 writers, which I have very positive opinions on Pyro 101's story, but also it gives me hope that maybe we might see Morganth again. We still don't know who this nothing is, and we're been given a cliffhanger. And I'm really hoping that Morganth does come back, because one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like her as a villain was because of how the writing essentially just made her be defeated by plot and nothing else. Because Morganth to me had so much potential, and yeah, she was kind of a badass, but unfortunately due to plot, you were just kind of ruined as a favorite villain of mine. I mean, I guess. But hopefully she does come back in 4th arc. I would definitely love to see her back, and I will welcome her with open arms. And overall, I have to say that Karamelle was great. I definitely really do enjoy it. And I also hope that you guys did enjoy my thoughts on Karamelle as a world overall. And if I was to score this, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. Because it's very solid, gameplay was fun, story definitely carry it aesthetically, and also it was a little bit too easy, but aesthetically it could have been better, but overall I'm very satisfied. So hopefully you guys did enjoy. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you haven't, and always remember to stay frenzy. Peace.